Hiya. So I want to talk about boundaries today. This is something that I come across regularly with clients. This struggle with boundaries, knowing when to say no and how to set boundaries. This doesn't necessarily have to be within an intimate relationship. It could be with work colleagues, bosses, friendship groups, family members, and also with your children, knowing when to set the boundaries with children, because as parents, we feel that we should give absolutely everything to our children, which we should, but we sometimes feel slightly manipulated. It can happen. It happens to me sometimes with my little girl. She was 6 yesterday, and she is very, very intelligent. She's very intuitive, and she knows exactly how to get me wrapped around her little finger. And it can be hard with boundaries because I'm an empath, as are a lot of my followers, and we have this feeling inside of guilt. We think, oh gosh, I have to do this because, they've turned the waterworks on or this or that. And at the end of the day, we have to understand and set our boundaries. This is really important in order to teach children boundaries, but also with regards to family members, relationships, bosses, having self-respect, because if we don't set boundaries, we can be walked all over. And it's important that we set boundaries that are standard across the board. So what I mean by that is that when we set a boundary, we set it with the intention that is our boundary with whoever crosses our path. Because sometimes if we have different boundaries, stagnation, if we kind of go with this kind of feeling of, oh, I'll have this kind of boundary for this person, and then maybe I'll be a little bit more lenient with this other person, it will not work, because we end up becoming so overwhelmed by knowing where the boundaries lie, and we kind of end up falling in the gap, so to speak, because we forget where our boundaries lie with each individual person. So it's very important to set a continual boundary with everybody that we are in a relationship with or we come across. It's a tricky one with boundaries, because if you don't set boundaries, your energy can be very, very depleted. You can feel very, very zapped. You can feel emotionally drained. You can feel exhausted. You can feel overwhelmed. And this happens to all of us. I think, as I said, I'm a real empath, and I obviously have clients, but sometimes quite often, to be honest, I will get messages from people saying that they need help, and I have a diary of clients, but something inside me thinks, oh gosh, that person really, really needs help. I really, really want to try and help them, especially when it comes to clients that are contacting me with children that have issues. I have a real deep empath for children and helping children. I don't like to see children in any kind of emotional upset or pain, and I want to be able to help straight away, but I have to also remember that I have boundaries. I have a family. I have my work clients, and if somebody has already booked me in, and they could have booked me in 3-4 weeks before, I must take that precedent. I must make sure that I give that person that slot because they have been waiting. And so it's very important for me to know, sometimes I've been in the past in a situation where I've taken on too many people in one day because I felt guilty. I felt like they needed my help. They were desperate for help. And I thought, oh, I have to do this. I have to do this. But I think it's taken me a long time to realize that you can't help everybody straight away. There has to be a time where you put a boundary up and you say enough is enough, and I need to have some downtime. I need some time for me, and this is about my personal this is about my personal experience, but I'm trying to give you an example because I think we all do it, and it's taken me a very long time to realize where I have to say no, I'm going to have to slot you in for maybe a week's time, because I was depleting my energy. I was becoming very tired, very exhausted. I wasn't having enough energy for myself and for my own children. And so it was very important for me to place these boundaries. If I didn't place these boundaries, then I could have ended up getting quite poorly myself. And I felt like I was being guided by spirit to sit back and say, I need to have that inner strength to know enough is enough, and I need to stand tall and say no. So I suppose I'm kind of giving you my opinion on myself here, but I think that we all do it. We never know when to say no to certain situations, especially with loved ones. These are people that we deeply, deeply care for, and we want them to be happy, and we want to do everything in our power to make sure they're okay. But it is also very, very important to set a boundary. If you know that you need some time for you, some self-love, some self-care, then you must slot that time in and know that that is the boundary. Because what will happen is you end up becoming quite resentful of others. You end up feeling very tired, very exhausted, and you become sick and poorly yourself. And then you're no good to anybody because you've not set those boundaries in place, that you end up being so overstretched, trying to help everybody out, that you have no time for your own needs. So I just wanted to discuss that today. And this goes the same with working relationships. We can have bosses or we can have colleagues that are expecting a lot of us, and if we're really hard workers and we give our all, which everybody should be giving 100% anyway if they're passionate about what they do, but it's incredibly important to know where to set a boundary. So taking lunch breaks, making sure that you don't overstretch yourself with work, and that you're having time for yourself, that you're not working too late in the office. I know that we're home at the moment, and you're kind of trying to get that balance between being at home and having home life and working life. And I think it can become very difficult because you're in an environment where you're at home and you're not traveling to work and having to leave work, you can overwork. And this is something that I myself do as well, because I work for myself and I work in a home environment. I tend to not switch off and I work a hell of a lot. And I think that where a lot of people have had to have that environment where they've been working at home instead of in an office, they've not known where to set their boundaries, when to stop for lunch, when to say no to things. Some clients have come to me and they're working at like 11, 12 at night and they don't know when to switch off. So it's about having that downtime, going and having that bath that you really need, watching that film that you want to watch, reading that book, just having some time for yourself and knowing where to set those boundaries. And if you find this really difficult, maybe even do like a bit of a timetable. I know that sounds a bit silly, but put your day in order and say, right, you know what, my alarm on my phone is going to go off at 1 o'clock. That's when I'm going to have my lunch. My alarm is going to go off at 6 o'clock, 6:30, and that is when I turn my laptop off. I'm having my dinner and I'm just going to enjoy my evening. Because we can get into this situation where we forget what's going on with our time, because we're kind of in this Groundhog Day at the moment and everything kind of falls into one, and we kind of forget when we need to take time out for us. Also with regards to bosses, if you're really hardworking, sometimes you can be taken advantage of. And if a boss thinks, oh, she'll do it, he'll do it, they're going to just keep throwing work at you, and you need to kind of set that boundary. And this isn't in a rude way or a disrespectful way. It's about knowing that you have the inner strength to say, I've done enough. So just think about that. In all aspects of your life, in family, friendships, with your children, with your work colleagues and your work situations, in every area of your life, really. Even when you're out at a supermarket and, say a cashier is very rude towards you, it's having that boundary of saying, that wasn't very respectful, that wasn't very polite, you don't have to be rude to them, but it's about setting that boundary where you won't let people overstep the mark. So really think about whether you are setting boundaries, whether you feel that you have good boundaries in place within your life, and it's a good opportunity for you to kind of sit back and look at where you can make changes. Okay, thanks very much.